All right, everyone. We start off with fairly big election news, actually, and not as big as the New Jersey Wildwood rally, but certainly far beyond expectations. Donald Trump the other day, in between his constant court appearances, the persecution, the lawfare against him, he found time to hold a rally in New York City. New York City is pretty far blue. It's mostly liberals there, and the surrounding conservative areas, people might shop there once in a while, but they don't really enjoy going to New York City. Myself, I'm in and out on New York City. It's too crowded and there's too much going on. Sensory overload definitely applies. But, if you want to go to an ethnic market and get weird ingredients for whatever the hell you're cooking, it could be a little bit of a mecca. Amsterdam the same way, by the way, and more green spaces. It ain't just Central Park, but I have my own bias. Link in the description. They were expecting 3,500 people, roughly thereabouts, to show up for the Trump rally there. It was closer to 25,000 at a rough preliminary estimate, considerably larger than expected, plenty of overflow. This has actually been a thing at multiple rallies. They were not expecting 80, 100,000 people at the Wildwood rally. That was in New Jersey, of course. Again, a relatively blue area. I know if you go down into the Pine Barrens, it tends to be rock-ribbed Republicans, but the main majority of the state's population, it's in the area that's adjacent to New York City. It's not the typical area that you would expect a Republican candidate to have a fairly worked-up crowd in, a lot of enthusiasm, or necessarily a large crowd. Meanwhile, Joe Biden can go to goddamn San Francisco and he won't get 25,000 people at a rally. 3,500, for him, that would be a big event. Trump's is like, I'm expecting this to be pretty cool. And then he's like, oh shit, a small town's population has shown up at the same time in order to hear me speak. The enthusiasm gap, I think, is going to play a role in the 2024 election. While the polls are close to even, nationally, Trump does have the lead, but it's a small lead. It's by a point or two. The enthusiasm gap that I'm seeing is enormous, and I think that it's mainly the economy. This is sort of a no-brainer take. I think it's because people are remembering the relative calm under Trump, other than the mean tweets and, oh my God, Krugman coming out and saying World War III is going to break out, which never happened. Other than that, things are relatively calm. You didn't have as much of a border crisis. It was there, but it was being tackled, belatedly, of course. You didn't have a skyrocketing crime rate, and you still do have that. I know that the liberals will always trot out statistics saying, well, the crime rate's going down again. Well, it's still higher than it was, and it's probably not going down at all because you simply commanded prosecutors not to prosecute. And so there's no crime. Oh, yeah, I know that he stabbed this woman, but we've declined to press charges because he has the right skin color or something like that. Trump has stormed New York City like it's his own personal Normandy, and this is not the first time in this election cycle that this has happened. Show me a rally with Joe Biden where there's not like a captive audience, where he can even get 3,500 people to show up, let alone 25,000. In a far blue zone. If Joe Biden held a rally today in Manhattan, do you think that 25,000 people would show up to hear him speak? No, it'd probably be 2,500. It'd be a really diminutive event, considering that this is, at least on paper, the President of the United States in an area that is politically very amenable to their policies. There's no enthusiasm. That's really going to hurt during the election. What you need to do is get people whipped into a frenzy, get them excited to actually vote for you. If they're excited, they're much more likely to actually show up. This is why I've said vote early, because, you never know. On election day, you might be sick or something like that. That'll reduce your enthusiasm somewhat. If I can get a couple thousand people to take my advice, well, then I've done my part for society. He stormed it. He knocked it out of the park. It's the same Agenda 47, basically. His rallies are kind of formulaic at this point because he has the same general talking points. And then maybe he does his snake story. People seem to really like that. I find it amusing. I remember in 2016 when he told the story of the woman taking in the cold and disheveled snake and keeping it warm and feeding it and stuff, and then she gets bitten and dies. I thought that was highly mimetic. It was construed as being Nazi propaganda by the legacy media, but then all Donald Trump has to do is drink a glass of water, and people say, well, Hitler drank water too. I think I'm seeing a connection here. under normal circumstances, a Republican candidate, assuming normal enthusiasm, so Bush '04, Mitt Romney or somebody like that, they're not going to be able to draw that kind of crowd in New York. And one thing that Trump is doing is actually very favorable to him with the lawfare against him. The fact that he's mainly in the New York area with all of these the cases that he has to litigate actually gives him an advantage, because Donald Trump is one of the main figureheads of New York City. He may have moved to Florida, but he's still New York. He's a fixture of that city, an icon. Some people think a negative icon, but he's still an icon of the city, of the growth of New York City during the big boom of the 80s, building skyscrapers and shit like that. And so he probably gets a little bit more bounce for the ounce, so to speak, when he's in that area. If he went to maybe California, you wouldn't necessarily expect quite as much turnout, admittedly, on the West Coast. He's more of a fixture of that particular area. But to have a rally with between 80 and 100,000 people in New Jersey, and a few weeks later to draw 25,000 in the middle of one of the most blue areas of the country for a Republican candidate is actually extreme. That is on the extreme end of enthusiasm. It shows that even in blue areas, there is this a block of people that are really, really enthusiastic about Donald Trump coming back into office. I mean, I know I am. I'm in Vermont. Rutland County is one of only 2 counties in this whole state that isn't solidly blue, the other one being the Northeast Kingdom, which is basically a bunch of farms, actually, and only got broadband internet, actually, not that many years ago. That was considered hilarious at the time, by the way. It's like, this one remnant spot within the state is still using dial-up, generally speaking. I don't even know if they would have had Fidium available or something like that. That's what I'm using, and thank goodness. Thank you, Fidium, and thank you, Quartering, for turning me on to that particular topic, because it's way better and actually cheaper than the standard internet that is so slow here. And we shouldn't be seeing, under normal circumstances, a Republican candidate getting this kind of crowd in such a blue zone. It would be like if Biden went out to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and he got 25,000 people, the legacy media would be dripping in a nectary fashion, gushing over him and gloating about how popular he was and how, oh my God, there's this huge turnout differential. Look at him work this crowd. Oh my God, it's amazing. It's like a rock star just walked out on stage. It's like Ozzy 82 or something like that. You know that those would be the articles that you would see. The problem is that they can't really do that now, can they? Because it never happens. Joe Biden is hard-pressed to find 1,000 people that he can cobble together, even in large blue communities, to actually pay attention to his boring speeches. He had that brain fart the other day where he was on stage giving the Medal of Honor and didn't quite know where he was. It wasn't entirely sure what the hell was going on there. And there are multiple videos I've been shown with laugh tracks overlapped over that particular incident. That 25,000 people is a lot to get, again, if you've been cast off as a far-right candidate and supposedly disgraced and terrible in every way, that's a lot for a Republican candidate. Even in a city that jam-packed, I mean, there's more than 25,000 registered Republicans in New York City. They just happen to be a minority. It's still hundreds of thousands of people. But to get that many people to show up, people have to work, people have, a home life and stuff like that, they've got other things to do, is pretty goddamn impressive. It shows that gap that we're seeing, and I think it's increasing, actually. I think that the enthusiasm gap was much more small a few months ago. Since the primaries have ended and the lawfare has continued, enthusiasm for Trump appears to be mounting, increasing rather than diminishing. That's about all. Peace out.